All right, and welcome to this week's edition of A Lot of Basketball. We've got a rather stacked pod for you this week. We got two regulars on the pod, two very good friends of mine. Gentlemen, I'll let you introduce yourselves.
I'm your actual friend, Greg. We went to college together.
Yeah, and
And my
I'm
newest
Tom. I'm more
friend.
of a friend of a friend, but no, but we're becoming friends. It's quickly happening.
I know so many people in your family now, so I mean, we're creating bonds and linkages every week.
Blood is thicker than water, as they say.
Definitely, definitely. All right, so we've got a stacked pod this week. A new format, a slightly different format. We're going to go with the theme of injury report this week. So we're going to take you through kind of different levels of severity of injuries. Greg, all too appropriate if you catch my drift, right?
No, I got no idea what you're talking about.
Well, I broke my ankle, so I am in definitely the out category
I
of the
forgot that
injury.
happened.
Yeah.
Kevin, when did you break your ankle?
I broke my ankle the Monday before Thanksgiving.
So clearly we're not that good of friends if I didn't know that. But Greg
Well,
didn't even remember, so I
yeah,
guess that
Greg
doesn't
didn't
say
know.
much for him either.
Yeah, exactly. So
How did you
I
break it? You have to tell the people how you broke your ankle.
well, in true Alob fashion, I was playing basketball in a men's league, and I got patchoulaed, basically. Funny
Someone
enough,
patchoulated you. They snuck under you while you took a jump shot?
that's exactly what happened. And if you could guess what college the player went to that did this to me, I bet you could get it in like three or five guesses.
Was it Duke?
It was Duke. Yep.
I was going to say he didn't even go to college. He's from the Republic of Georgia.
Ooh, another good guess, but that not correct. The guy was from Duke. His name's Matt Christensen. He's yeah, my enemy, number one, public enemy number one right now.
I mean, did you like make up with him, or are you still that's still an
I,
sort of a
I
rivalry?
I am feuding. Yes, I'm definitely feuding. I mean, I was lighting him up to start the game, and he got really upset, and he just decided to go ahead and patchouli me. So here we
Now,
are
did he
two
actually
weeks
play
later.
basketball? He actually played basketball at Duke, is that right?
Yes, yeah.
Because I'm seeing his player page, he's listed at 6'10". What was he doing guarding you?
Oh yeah, he's a giant. I don't big mismatch. I'll tell you what, but his size 18 foot took up plenty of space.
And I'm sorry. Well, at least you had plenty of time to research basketball.
I did. So good, great transition. So with that being said, I did get to spend quite a lot of time watching the NBA the last 2 weeks. So, and also to keep in line with the ankle injuries, we're just going to jump right into it and talk about the number one ankle injury in the NBA right now, which is Steph Curry's ankle. Something that we didn't expect to see, given he's had some pretty clean bills of health, but he's now out for, they say, several weeks. They're estimating 2. So I guess first question I've got for you guys is what does this mean for the Warriors? This is kind of, I guess, Durant's time to shine and step in, but I'm curious what you guys think about what this kind of means for them.
Yeah. I mean, if ever there was a team to survive an injury by Steph Curry, it is the Golden State Warriors. Let's talk 2 years ago when he hurt his knee in the playoffs, and they still were able to survive and make the NBA Finals without him. Or I mean, like he came back during the Western Conference Finals at some point, I believe. He came off the bench and lit it up. But he was never really like 100% again, which is probably why they lost the finals. Should we just talk about that NBA Finals?
Let's just go back to 2015.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
No,
Yeah.
so they could survive it. I mean, they got Durant, they got Klay Thompson, they got Draymond Green. That's 3 All NBA players right there. So, I mean, they'll definitely miss the 2-time MVP. But they won't struggle to score. The way they move the ball is you could fit anyone in. I mean, Nick Young was the best player on the Lakers last year, to be honest. So they could use him. They've had games where he hasn't even played. So
I mean, Greg, there's no doubt like this team is still very good without Steph Curry. Like even when he's been off the floor this year, they've still their offense with him off the floor would rank 8th in the league, which it's still pretty solid. But there's no question they're still more mortal when he's not fully healthy or when he's not playing, because he just sort of is the engine that makes that offense go, and he's just by far the most dangerous component of it, with all the attention that he takes up from opposing defenses. So I've got a few numbers here for you. When Steph is on the floor, their offensive rating is 118.9 points per 100 possessions, and when he sits, it's 106.7. So they're 12.2 points per 100 possessions better when Curry's on the floor. So he's really the part of the offense that I think gives him the most upside. He's kind of like that. He brings the magic factor a little bit, you know? So I think that when he's out, the Warriors are just merely a very, very good team versus an elite one.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Curry's the type of guy that maintains unbelievable floor spacing. Like there's not many people in the league that you have to defend, 3 feet out from the 3-point line, and that extra space I think means a lot and might even translate to those 12 points. But Tom, what I'm actually curious to get your opinion on is given his history of ankle injuries, is there cause for alarm? Is there a reason to get worried that this might snowball into something bigger?
Well, I remember when he was having those ankle injuries early on in his career, they made some change to his exercise regimen. I forget if they were strengthening specifically muscles in his quads and his legs to try and prevent these things. It was something that was a little counterintuitive, what they've been doing. But I mean, they just have so much science and sports science to make sure these kinds of things don't happen anymore. So I'm not concerned, like in terms of this being possibly like derailing his entire season. I think this will probably end up being just a one-off freak thing that happens, because I think some of his injuries earlier on in his career were maybe even without, they're kind of like a non-contact type of injury, where in this one he stepped on someone's foot. That can happen to anyone. So yeah, this doesn't concern me too much.
Yeah. And Greg, what do you think about if he's out for that finals rematch on Christmas Day or around that time period? What do you expect in that matchup?
I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if one of those teams just decided to rest some players. That seems to be what people do during marquee matchups these days. I know it's Christmas Day, and they tried to make some changes to where they're going to fine people if they rest people. But I mean, if someone says, "Hey, Kevin Durant has like a sore knee or something," you wouldn't be surprised to see that. But if that doesn't happen, I mean, I think it's more of a fair game, to be honest. I think the Warriors would have had him pretty heavily if Curry was available. But now, like Tom said, they go from being an elite team to a very good team, and the Cavaliers are playing some basketball, so they'll be able to compete.
True. Yeah, I agree. I think either way.
And one thing that specifically, I wanted to get into the specifics of what changes about their offense in terms of their shot selection when Steph Curry's on and off the court. Maybe it's getting a little bit into the weeds, but it might be interesting to some folks. So when Curry's on the floor, the Warriors take 38% of their shots from 3, and they hit 41%. When he's off the floor, they take just 32% of their shots from 3, and they hit 38% of those threes. So they take 6% fewer shots from behind the arc, and all 6% of those go to the mid-range, actually. They don't take any more layups. They don't take any more dunks. All 6% go. All 6% of those shots are allocated to mid-range jumpers when he's off the floor, and they shoot a worse clip from deep. So it just goes to show kind of a tangible impact when he's off the court.
Yeah, definitely. There's 12 points right there just in shot selection, right? So
yeah,
awesome. So actually, want to transition now to keep it in the out category of our injury report. You've got Steph Curry out. The other one who's going to be out for a while is also Nerlens Noel, a name that kind of got thrown around a ton this offseason in terms of what his agent did with him and the contract negotiations. It looks like the circus is kind of continuing with him. I don't know if you guys saw last week he was getting a hot dog during halftime from the media room. This week it turns out he's going to need thumb surgery and miss several weeks. Carlisle has said a few offhand remarks about his performance on the court and the fact that he got a hot dog during halftime. Curious to get your guys' opinions on what you think about Nerlens Noel this season and kind of how he's trending over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's not looking good for Nerlens Noel, to be honest. Took the qualifying offer this summer, making $4.1 million this year, unrestricted free agent after the year because he bet on himself, and he is losing that bet. He is averaging 12.5 minutes per game, 4 points and 4.1 rebounds, which, I mean, those are fine, like per minute numbers, but if you're not good enough to play more than 12.5 minutes for one of the worst teams in the NBA, then you are doing a bad job. And like I said, I don't know does anyone have the numbers that the Mavericks offered him? It was better than 4.1 million. I think he was getting to get like, I'm just gonna make this up, like 10 million or something per year.
Sounds close enough.
It was definitely somewhere around there, but he bet on himself, and now he's looking like he may be getting the minimum next year, to be honest.
Yeah, Greg, and I think it's weird because he always struck me as a pretty valuable player in the league. He was a guy who can be sort of a Tyson Chandler kind of rim runner out of a high pick and roll set. He appears to be like he could be a freak defensively. He's very long. He's very athletic. I don't know. I don't watch him enough to know how his instincts are, but he has all the tools to be a very valuable player in this league. I think there's just been some attitude issues. Rick Carlisle's known to be pretty prickly towards guys who don't have the right attitude. I know him and obviously Rajon Rondo couldn't get along, Kevin's boy. But I'd be really curious to see how Noel could do in a different environment, like how Dion Waiters bet on himself when he went to Miami and then got paid this last offseason. If Noel could get a new situation to see what he could produce. Because, this has not worked out for him so far.
Yeah, I just looked it up. The actual offer that his former agent confirmed they turned down was 4 years, $70 million. So,
and now he's eating hot dogs at halftime. So it sounds like a good trade-off.
Yeah, the hot dog thing was pretty funny, but I saw Rick Carlisle making jokes about it, like saying how he's going to get Noel a sponsorship from the local hot dog spot in Dallas.
Yeah,
he seemed to take that in good humor. I don't think he was really too miffed about it.
Yeah, I was just surprised for a guy that is normally that prickly, as you mentioned, to take that one in stride was pretty surprising. Alrighty, so last note in our out section of the injury report, you've got another great scorer, great talent to watch, Devin Booker. He's got an abductor strain. You don't hear that one come out all the time, but abductor strain, I believe last night or 2 nights ago. They're saying he's going to be out for 2 to 3 weeks. Obviously, the Suns suck, so not a huge deal in the overall grand scheme of things, but kind of stinks that you don't get to watch him put up ridiculous numbers as he did against the Celtics and the Sixers over the last couple of games. So I want to get your thoughts on his injury and quick take there.
Yeah, so I don't want to be the actually guy, but I believe it's the adductor. The adductor, not the abductor. Those are two different muscles.
When'd you get your PhD?
Yeah, Dr. Tom here. The adductor brings your leg in towards your body. Abductor pushes it away from your body. So you know that embarrassing machine you do at the gym all the time, Kevin?
Yeah, of course, yes.
Yeah, so, I mean, Booker, I've watched a little bit of him this year, and he is really just an impressive scorer. The kid just turned 21 years old a few weeks ago. He's putting up 24 points per game, 4.5 rebounds, 4 assists on decent efficiency, certainly a lot better than he was last year. Shooting 45% from the field, 38% from 3 on about 6 attempts, and 87% from the free throw line. He's getting to the line a decent amount. So just given how young he is and how dominant of a scorer he can be and has been consistently, I think he's got a pretty high ceiling in this league.
Yeah, and while the Suns are bad, I thought they were going to be worse, to be honest. They're 9-17. I thought they would be worse than that.
Yeah, me too.
So he's been doing a great job. I actually watched like a large portion of that Sixers game, and he was amazing. So I'm going to give the rundown of his last 5 games: 19 points, 46 points, 38 points, 22, and 33. I mean, this guy's just scoring. He can put the ball in the basket. It's fun to watch. I know. McGovern, you want to say something about the 70-point game?
Yeah, I mean, it was a total sham, but whatever, it still counts.
Yeah, I mean, I know people are really critical of his defense and don't think that he's like adding that much value. That the team is like only 2 points per 100 possessions better when he's on the floor versus when he's off, which is kind of surprising. But the offense really craters when he's off the court. So it's just the defense does get better. But again, he's so young and he's a shooting guard. So like, I don't think his defense is like a make or break sort of thing for his in terms of his value.
Yeah, and that adductor strain, I don't think is going to do a lot of help for his defense either.
Yeah, you need that adductor.
Yeah, you're really crucial. All righty, so let's move on. Let's move on to our questionable section of the injury report. And sticking, I guess, towards the 76ers, we're going to go with the I want to get your guys' take on a big man feud, which we don't see these as frequently as we used to, but Joel Embiid and Andre Drummond feuding a little bit on Twitter last week, kind of going back and forth at each other. First off, I want to get your guys' take on Embiid seemingly getting in fights with random people or specific people all the time, or just kind of feuding over Twitter with these people. So kind of curious to get your either kind of love it or hate it take on this most recent feud.
Well, Embiid's the greatest person ever, I think, is the short of it.
Oh, sorry. You're right.
He's just he's like a 20-year-old, 21-year-old kid or whatever he is, and he just is acting like it, and he just happens to be really, really good at basketball. So he just talks crap. He talks some serious crapola, and then he backs it up, and I love it.
Yeah, and I enjoy it too. I will say I kind of wish there was a little more edge to it. I saw after the game he and Andre Drummond like dapped each other up afterwards, and so it was kind of like it was all good. But I don't need everything to be like the '90s where there was all that animosity, but just a little bit of an edge and competitiveness there would have been nice. During the game, obviously they were going at each other, so that's one thing. But just to see some of these feuds not get physical, but to actually be real and not just kind of staged.
Yeah, it makes the regular season that much better, right? Like you have people that hate each other, so they try a little bit harder. It makes the games a bit more competitive, I think. Not that I think most of the games have been super competitive this year, but it does, I think, add a little bit more to the story.
I also don't expect any kind of like Hakeem Olajuwon, David Robinson sort of rivalry here, just because Drummond doesn't have that skill level or that upside in my eyes. I mean, Joel Embiid is just far and away the more skilled player with the higher ceiling, and Drummond, though much improved this year and is a great rebounder, just he can't really keep up with what Embiid can do on the court.
Yeah, I think another big part of that rivalry not budding is that I think Drummond might just be the nicest person in the whole world. He's just such a nice guy, and you don't see that fire in him to like really hate a person. So that won't help. I feel like, I mean, Embiid talking trash is just Embiid having fun, but Drummond's not going to respond to that kind of thing. He's a good player. He doesn't have the offense, but what are you going to do? Not everyone can be Joel Embiid.
So true. Or try and date Rihanna. It's only few and far between, I guess. All right, so I think probably the most suitable, questionable move on this whole injury report, I'm going to go, I guess, a little bit outside the NBA, but want to talk quickly. I want to give some airtime to this. To LeVar Ball pulling his son out of UCLA, believing that he'll be able to prep him better for the NBA than UCLA will. Now, I don't want to spend a ton of time here because I feel like a lot of people are talking about it, but I want it, Greg. I am assuming you've got something clever to say about what LeVar is doing here. So I'll leave it to you to kind of take it from there.
Well, that's a lot of pressure. Well, one thing I'll say is I think that it's LiAngelo, right? I think that
It's Jello. It's Jello, I believe.
Yeah,
he goes by Jello.
Yeah, LeVar Ball has said before that not all three of his kids are going to make it to the NBA, and this is the one that he was talking about. And I think part of it is the only reason he was at UCLA in the first place is because of the other two of them. So he might just be hiding this guy from getting exposed for not really being good at basketball. Was one part of it. And then the other part of it is that he was shoplifting in China, which is, yeah, like you shouldn't be allowed to play basketball.
Yeah, that's highly frowned upon, I guess.
I mean, it wasn't great, but you really think he shouldn't be allowed to play basketball because he shoplifted something in China? It doesn't. I mean,
for some amount of time.
Yeah.
Greg, I like your hypothesis, though, that he's probably the least likely of them to make it to the league, and rather than expose his legacy and his son to that, might as well just take it out of his hands entirely. Although you feel so bad for that kid. But
yeah, the only thing is, I think Jello is the only one of the Ball sons who's really going to need that college education because he's not going to be playing professional basketball. So, like, it's tough. Taking him out of UCLA, I mean, that's a great school, and he's going to want to get that degree. He has no chance of going to the NBA. I listened to some podcast where they spoke to a scout, and they said that Jello isn't on anyone's draft board, no matter how deep it goes. Like, it's just not really a possibility for him. So maybe playing professionally overseas there's some potential there, and maybe LeVar will his training will help him play overseas. But part of me just doubts it. It seems just like a lot of publicity.
Hey, one thing about that is that he could just, if he's not going to make it to the NBA, then he might as well just go play professionally overseas right now. And he can make money right now. And I also had to say again about the shoplifting. I changed my mind, Tom. You convinced me. Because AJ Price on UConn stole a bunch of laptops one time. They suspended him, and I was like, come on. He's just stealing laptops. Get over it. So I can't be hypocritical. Let LeAngelo back in. He should be starting at UCLA next game.
I honestly think if he were better at basketball, then UCLA wouldn't have been so quick to sit him. And maybe if his father wasn't such a pain, they would have let it slide a little more. But it did become a national incident and a whole political thing. So, this isn't a political podcast. We'll leave that out. But, I mean, yeah, we can move on. I think we've said enough about the Ball family.
Yeah, agree. That's enough Ball for like the next year. Another questionable note here is actually going to be turning to Kawhi Leonard, who looks apparently like he could be coming back sometime soon in the next week, potentially. So wanted to get your take, guys, on the right quadriceps tendinopathy. Dr. Tom, did I get that right?
That's correct.
That has been plaguing Kawhi, not the ankle, not getting patchoulaed like myself, but actually some other injury that Tony Parker also has. That's kind of been a bit of a vague injury, but it appears like Kawhi is going to be ready to come back soon. I kind of want to get your take on, one, how does this change the Spurs, and two, if you think he's actually going to be back this week.
Yeah, so I think Tony Parker's was even more severe. It was almost like, I think it was like a full-on tear of the quadriceps, and he had to have surgery, whereas Kawhi, I don't believe, has had any kind of surgery. And it's just been this lingering weird issue, and the Spurs are just so secretive about the whole thing. So it's just caused a lot of speculation from Spurs fans and NBA analysts as to what's actually going on with this guy. And I mean, there have been shots of him going through shoot around, and Tony Parker said that he was practicing with him a bit. So that's encouraging. I know I love Kawhi Leonard. I can't wait to see him back out on the court. But what's been interesting is how good the Spurs have been without him. They're 16-8. They're third in the West right now, with the sixth best record in the league. And their offense is just completely hinged on LaMarcus Aldridge, who's been incredible. And when Aldridge has come out, their team is sort of falling apart a little bit. So they want their other superstar to come back. But one rumor I've heard is that the Spurs were actually sitting out Kawhi a little longer than necessary, because they wanted to make sure that LaMarcus Aldridge, came around and got more comfortable with the team, and even more so that they wanted him to get an all-star bid, because that's important to LaMarcus Aldridge. So, I mean, that's I read that on Pounding the Rock as some speculation.
Nice. Start the rumor mill.
Did you write that article?
Okay, it's true. I also write for Pounding the Rock. I did not write that one. So that's a little plug for my the site I write for, though.
Yeah, I'll say some words. Like you said, third in the West. If he was there the entire season, wouldn't they be third in the West?
Probably. I would say yes.
You're saying Kawhi's presence wouldn't have catapulted the Spurs past the Rockets or the Warriors?
Do you think it would have? I feel like I just couldn't imagine it having done so.
Oh, I agree. They probably third in the West is probably where they would be, but probably with a better record. But yeah.
Yeah, but Popovich is he's just the best to do it. Probably the best ever, maybe, because Phil Jackson is the worst ever. So therefore, Greg Popovich must be the best ever. Yeah, Popovich always seemed like one of those guys where he could just put anybody in the game and they would do a good job, and you would always trust them. I remember
George Mason. Is that his name?
Nope, that's a college. Sure.
What was the guy Mason? Shooter for the Spurs, who's terrible everywhere else.
Yeah, we'll think of it. I don't know. But I'll get back to my story. Back during the lockout year when the Spurs had that really tough road trip, and then he just decided to send all his starters home, which is when like this resting debates really first started, because they had a matchup against the Heat, and they didn't even bring like Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, Ginobili, and Danny Green. They literally just sent them all home and didn't bring them to the game. So that's when this started. And then with the team that they had against like the LeBron, Wade, Bosh, peak Heat, they like lost in the last minute. And that's just the Spurs that we're seeing this year. They just, whoever's on the court is going to do their job. They're going to be trusted, and then they're just going to do it. And
even Roger Mason Jr., who Kevin
Roger Mason Jr. That's the one. He was probably the superstar of that game against the Heat.
Nice. Go Spurs.
Go Los Spurs. Awesome. All right. So with that, we have cruised through our out and our questionable sections. We're going to transition to our day-to-day section. And to kick off day-to-day, guys, the Cavs, 13 in a row now. LeBron James had a big game-sealing shot tonight. First off, want to get your takes on: are you impressed? Are you surprised? They're now 18-7 after winning 13 in a row, and really, to set the stage here, Dwayne Wade's kind of been leading the charge. He's got the highest net rating over the last 15 games in clutch situations for players that have played at least eight of those games. So at 35 years old, you've got Dwayne Wade with the highest net rating, and it's really being led by the offensive rating, leading the way there for the Cavs. So talk to me a little bit about whether or not you guys are actually impressed by this streak or really even surprised.
Well, I'll start it off. So they have won, 13 in a row is what we said, which is good. You can only play who you play, and they've won every game. But me and Jake talked about this a little bit last week. I'm going to read you off these teams that they've beaten: the Mavericks, the Knicks, the Hornets, the Clippers, the Pistons, the Nets, the Hornets, the 76ers, the Heat, the Hawks, the Grizzlies, the Bulls, the Kings. How is that the stretch of schedule?
Oh my
that
God.
is such an amazingly fortunate stretch of schedule.
Oh my God.
The marquee victories in there are the Pistons,
and that's
the 76ers, and the Knicks or the Heat. Those were the other two like mildly okay teams who are
that's unbelievable.
500. So I mean, yes, it's impressive that they've won all these games, but I can't read into it enough because none of these teams are good other than the Pistons, who me and Jake and I think are a legit team. Tom also thinks they're a legit team, but they're not the Celtics, the Rockets, any of the top teams in the West, really. So I'm impressed with all the wins. I'm not impressed by who all the wins are against.
Fair.
Yeah,
fair
no,
enough.
that's totally fair, I think. One thing I just checked it out. In the last 15 games, the Cavs rank about league average in defense. So that's been one thing that people have been knocking them for all season is their bad defense. And we kind of knew all along this was a strong offensive team. They have a lot of offensive-minded players with Dwayne Wade and Kyle Korver coming off the bench. And with Tristan Thompson out, they've had to play even more Kevin Love at center, which is another offensive-focused group. But even despite this, they've been 14-1 in their last 15 games. They're still just league average in defense. And that's a step up because they were dead last through the first month of the season. So maybe it's showing they have some kind of switch to flip here, and then they can go into the playoffs and step it up enough. I don't know. Am I impressed with it? Not really. Maybe it's because I was so underwhelmed with the first month of the season that this is more in line with my expectations of them, because they still should be the favorites to win the East. So, until they do that, nothing that they do is going to surprise me.
Yeah, fair. And the thing I'm really interested about, so yeah, they've played great and they've got some wins against teams that suck but strung those wins together. How do things change again when you introduce Isaiah Thomas back into the lineup? He was playing, I think 4-on-4 the other day. So he's starting to play some contact basketball and eventually stepping it up a bit. What do you guys expect to see? Give me some of your preliminary thoughts on when IT comes back. How does this change?
I have absolutely no idea, because Isaiah Thomas was just so ball dominant against the Celtics. He was playing with a lot of times he was playing with four people who couldn't score. So just his ability to get to the rim with no other offensive options was amazing last season. And putting him on the same team with LeBron James, if he's fully healthy, offensively that's amazing. But defensively, he's listed as 5'9", which means that he's not 5'9". And long term, regular season, it'll be great. Long term, playoffs, I don't know about his defense.
Yeah, but you have to think about who he'd be replacing. So right now, the starting point guard is Jose Calderon. Did you know that, Greg?
I kind of knew that, but I didn't want to believe it. I saw him start one game, but I just said that must just be an aberration and not the norm.
How many years ago was he too washed up to be a Knick? Like, I'm in shock that the fact that they've managed a league average defense with Calderon starting at point guard is actually I take it all back. That is impressive because he can't guard anybody. I mean, Isaiah Thomas at least tries and he's quick enough to stay in front of somebody. I think Thomas coming back is going to be huge. They're going to have an actual point guard for the first time in a long time. And also news this week was Derrick Rose is trying to make his comeback too, which has kind of been a bizarre situation. Kevin, what do you think about the Derrick Rose situation?
Yeah, that's been one of the weirdest things that I've ever seen in a really long time. Derrick Rose, I mean, can't fault the guy. He's got a really long life and hopefully healthy life ahead of him. And if I was in his shoes and making a boatload of money and having made a boatload of money and won an MVP, going through another rehab, going through, I'm sure, the pain and all the icing and whatever else he needs to do to get ready to even play in these games now. I kind of liken it to Brandon Roy a little bit, and how, Brandon Roy just wanted to play, loved to play, but injuries caught up to him. And I kind of think of that as a similar environment. So, whatever he decides, I think he's a great player, and I have loved watching him. I think it's such a shame that he's been injured as much as he has. But, as the Cavs fans have said, I also I support him 100%, whatever he decides to do.
Yeah, Jake and I touched on this last week, and I support him like 50% because of that game on the Knicks last year when he just decided not to show up and not tell anybody. And so it's like, all right, I hope you're healthy as a person, but I don't care. Sorry, that's a really mean thing to say, but he's not a good guy in my book. So
because he left one game with the Knicks?
He also had some off the court stuff going on that I don't know. I don't know how the legality of that all played out, so I don't want to speculate on it. But I think there's probably a case to be made that he's not a good guy. But either way, we're talking strictly basketball here. I don't know that LeBron really cared whether or not he came back from strictly from a basketball perspective. Derrick Rose wasn't all that great when he was on the court for them. He stifled the offense. Dwayne Wade really couldn't play with him at all. And D Wade's pretty good as a primary ball handler, especially on second units. So Rose kind of negated some of his value. I don't think the Cavs are any worse for the wear if he continues to sit out.
Hey, Derrick Rose on the season. 12 assists, 19 turnovers in 7 games.
That's shocking. That's crazy.
Bad.
Per game.
Close to one to one.
No, that's pretty bad. He's had 12 assists in 7 games as the point guard of the Cleveland Cavaliers, which is it's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, so I just pulled up his on-off court numbers, and the Cavaliers are 20.6 points per 100 possessions better when Derrick Rose is on the bench. So,
yikes!
That is the worst among anybody who's played more than 17 minutes on the team.
Oh my God!
Absolutely miserable. So, I don't think they're. Again, his teammates probably want the best for him from a health perspective, but from a basketball perspective, they are probably rooting for him to stay out.
As is Greg. So with that, I want to actually transition now to our healthy section of the injury report. People that are marked ready to go. And there's a few people I want to talk about first. First is Bradley Beal dropping a 50-piece this week. Wizards are kind of, you look at the Eastern Conference standings and they're the Wizards, probably the 3 or the 4 seed. It's been that way for the past, 4 or 5 years almost, it seems like. But Bradley Beal kind of with an offensive explosion. John Wall sitting on the bench. Guys' reactions, first take on if this catapults Bradley Beal in your mind to a more elite scorer, or if he was already there. I kind of want to get your take there.
I mean, we know that Bradley Beal can score, and he's been scoring. He's been the number 2 option on this team for a while. And we like what he does. But, I mean, the Wizards are only 13-11 right now. And they're missing John Wall, and you could tell very much that they are missing John Wall. He's not carrying this team, like, every night. So that 51-point game was the second night of a back-to-back. The first night of that back-to-back, they lost by 47 points to the Utah Jazz, and he scored 11 points on 4 for 15 shooting. So while the 51-point game is good, it's amazing. Not many people do that. The 47-point loss to the Jazz is equally amazing in a sense. So I'm impressed. I'm impressed by the one game, but the Wizards have not been good without John Wall. In the last few games Bradley Beal's played, they are 4 and 6 in their last 10. Not good.
That is not good, but that's some quick counting on the spot there, Greg.
Thank you. I'm very good.
So I was just looking at the numbers for Bradley Beal when John Wall is both on the court and off the court. And not surprisingly, Beal scores about 3 points more per 36 minutes when John Wall is off the court. He's shooting a few more shots in that time. But he's actually surprisingly more efficient when John Wall is off the court, too. You'd think that with John Wall creating his shots and kicking out that he'd be able to hit more from 3. But he's shooting 39% from 3 when John Wall sits, and just 34.5% from 3 when John Wall's on the court. I think it's a pretty surprising stat, and maybe it's just a small sample size situation. But the other thing that kind of surprised me is that Bradley Beal doesn't step up his playmaking at all when John Wall is sitting either. He has the same exact assist rate. You'd think that the Wizards' offense would lean a little bit more heavily on him when Wall's out, but it looks like it's kind of, at this point, he's settled into who he is as a player, albeit a very, very good scorer and a player that most teams would want to have. But in terms of just making plays for others, I was a little surprised by that.
Yeah, and one quick thing I'll point out. I know McGovern said they're like the 3-4 seed, but which is how I picture them in my head, and they very well may have been that yesterday. But today, they are in the 8th seed in the East, but they are 1 game back of the 4 seed. So the Eastern Conference is very tightly packed right now.
Of mediocre basketball.
Yep. And the Knicks are they're pushing their way up, and they're going to get in there. They're trying to be as mediocre as everybody else.
Nice. Well,
I will say, even when John Wall was playing earlier this season, I'd take a look at his box scores, and they'd always just be very inefficient shooting nights for him. He'd be like 5 for 16 and like 6 for 18. It was very strange. I think he's having one of his worst shooting seasons so far. That wasn't backed up by any stats. I'll actually look it up and then confirm that later. But it's been weird to see Bradley Beal kind of become the guy for them in terms of their go-to guy down the stretch and in crunch time.
Hey, Tom, no need to look it up. Bradley Beal is having his worst career shooting season from 3.
John Wall or Bradley Beal?
Bradley Beal. Were you talking about John Wall?
I was saying John Wall wasn't shooting the ball very well earlier this season.
Well, pretend you were talking about Bradley Beal and you were right.
Nice. Go get him, stat man.
Good job, Tom.
I'll take it.
Hey, what do we got next, McGovs? Come on, hit us with some good stuff.
So I think this is probably the one that is kind of snuck onto the radar a bit for me. I guess mainly because I haven't been paying as much attention to the Western Conference teams outside of the Warriors. But Christ, James Harden is playing at an unreal clip again. You wouldn't expect, based on the season he had last year, but usage is through the roof. Tom, I'm sure you've got usage numbers there. 3-point shooting through the charts. He's on an MVP type tear again this year, and as long as Russell Westbrook doesn't average a triple double, he might get it. So not only do you have potential MVP candidate, you've got a Chris Paul perennial MVP candidate most of his career as well, and probably the most improved player in Clint Capella. So I just want to talk with you guys about what you've seen from Houston this year. Are they a real threat? Do they have enough to put it together? And really get your thoughts on how Harden's been playing so far this year.
Come on, you got to mention Eric Gordon, the reigning 6th man of the year.
Eric Gordon.
Before Chris Paul came back, this guy looked like an all-star, and he's still second on the team in scoring, averaging 19.4 points per game. And now he's coming off the bench. So when you got 19.4 points per game coming off the bench, that's helpful. And then you got D'Antoni's this offense, who I feel like the league changed just for Mike D'Antoni. He started changing it with the Suns, and now because of that, people are just launching away the three-pointer. What Ryan Anderson does for this team in the regular season is it's just not matched by anybody. You see Steph Curry shoot really long threes from time to time, but that's just where Ryan Anderson spots up from, and you have to guard him. He does that every game. So just their offense.
I love that, Greg. I love that you appreciate Ryan Anderson.
I hate Ryan Anderson. But
okay, you do.
But I like what he does.
That makes more sense.
No, I actually don't hate him. I do like him. I just think that he can't play during the playoffs.
Yeah, I don't think he can play ever.
No, he's a great offensive player during the regular season. Dominant. Nobody like him. Maybe not dominant, but unique. And those are synonyms in my book, I guess.
Did you say the same thing about like Hito Turkoglu and those sort of players?
Yeah, right when Hito Turkoglu led the Magic to the NBA Finals. That's probably a bad example of a person to use.
Yeah, but also not a lot of players do just spot up from 32 feet out. I mean, maybe that's a little far, but yeah, Ryan Anderson is a unique player in that sense. Not a lot of guys do that. Eric Gordon, his teammate, kind of does that too. But I mean, back to Harden, he has been absolutely incredible. For you longtime Alob listeners, you can go back to our kind of end of season awards podcast from last year, and I know a lot of us picked James Harden. I don't think any of us thought Russell Westbrook deserved the MVP, though we acknowledged that we thought he would win it just based on the media, the corrupt media.
Yeah.
No, but we all thought that Harden deserved it, and he has been runner-up twice out of the last 3 years, and through the first quarter of the season, there's no doubt that he has deserved the top billing as MVP. LeBron James is close behind him for number 2, but Harden right now is certainly my MVP.
Yeah, I'm with you, Tom. And the only thing that scares me is that with Chris Paul coming back, you wonder if his stats are going to come down. But as of yet, his stats have not gone down at all. And they as a matter of fact, they're flying up. Since Chris Paul came back, he has games of 48, 29, 21, 37, 37, 29, and 36.
That seems like a higher average than what he had previously.
Yeah, exactly.
Man, Chris Paul is really, really good still. I mean, probably top 12 player in the NBA good still, in my opinion. And he is selfless. He's never cared about his scoring average. I could see him totally helping Harden's case for MVP. One thing I will say about Harden's shooting that has felt a little unsustainable is his three-point shooting. He's taking 11 threes per game, which is pretty ludicrous. It's the most in the NBA. Second most in the NBA is 10 threes per game. That's Eric Gordon, his teammate. So that's kind of crazy. But James Harden is shooting 40.5% from three on a bunch of he's pulling up all the time. Like, these are not easy three-point. They're not catch and shoot three-pointers, right? He's pulling up off of pick and rolls when guys go under and, shooting contested ISO threes. I can't imagine he's going to end the season above 40% from three, especially on that volume of attempts.
Yeah, but there's swag attempts, and there's value in that.
No question about that. There are definitely swag attempts.
Well, outside of the swag attempts and actually talking about that three-point shot, what I actually do want to end on, and it's a softer, easier Alob question, but Jason Tatum, NBA's three-point percentage leader at 51% through however many games this season. What do you think he settles in at? Can he sustain it as the leading three-point shooter? And we'll end with the Celtics softball for this podcast.
I do want to address the Celtics question because I know you're a big Celtics homer, Kevin. But before we do, can I just go back to one thing? And that's, you talked about Clint Capella as kind of like the no-brainer most improved player. And I have a bone to pick with it.
Ooh, I thought I'd sneak that in and no one would contest it.
I don't think there's any chance that Porzingis is not the most improved player. He's averaging 25 a game. Last year, he was the second option behind Melo, and I want to say he was averaging, Greg, keep me honest here, was it 16, 17 points a game?
Yeah, I think it was 17, 18, but it was 17 was one of your options, so yes. I'll say yes.
It was one of my options, yeah.
Yes, but he has become an amazing player. 18.1. This is the number.
Okay, so yeah, you were right in the 17, 18 range. But even so, just as far as his usage and his efficiency, I have to think he's among the front runners for most improved here, right?
Gotta be. He's as a big Knicks fan, I didn't think he was ready, but he's shown that he is ready. But now defenses are adjusting to him. He's seeing the double team a lot. He's seeing people just be very physical and just daring the ref to call fouls on them. And the refs are not calling fouls because Kristaps was flopping before, but now he's settling in, not flopping as much because he I don't know, he's just letting people be physical with him. So he might have to get back to flopping if he wants to start getting calls again.
Yeah, and I've got two more guys that I think might be better most improved candidates over your boy Clint Capella. That's Victor Oladipo in Indiana.
Ooh, good call.
And Tobias Harris in Detroit. But I mean, Harris is actually kind of
always been good.
Yeah, that's true. I think he's just getting more love because the Pistons are winning games right now.
Yeah.
Yep. But Oladipo is a good one for sure.
Yeah.
Averaging 23 points a game after I think taking just 3 shots per game last year. I'm not sure. But
yeah, I think that's right, Tom.
Is that right? We don't even need to double check that one.
I forgot that he actually shot the ball. Like I actually thought he was just like one of those guys that would just dunk a basketball every now and then. But it turns out he can actually shoot it. So you've convinced me. I changed my vote.
Hey, one funny thing about Oladipo is that his second year in the NBA, he averaged 17.9. So we knew he had this in him, kind of. We were hoping he would progress to this, but he got his growth stunted a little. It started before Russ, but Russ certainly didn't help him.
And side note, that's a really good strategy for winning most improved players, just having one purposely really bad season and then go back to playing well and hope that the voters acknowledge it.
Yeah, it's genius. So if you're listening and you're good at basketball, do a bad job this year. You can win an award next year.
It's a good life strategy.
But I'll get back to Jason Tatum. This guy is, I mean, Jake says it all the time. Rookies don't shoot very well. That's the thing about rookies. But he's doing it. And
the best actually.
He's doing it. It being the best. Come on, obviously. He's only attempting 3 threes per game compared to James Harden's 11. So, can you really be impressed? And the answer is no.
Well, I think averaging 14 points a game too, though. I mean, come on. Give the guy some love, Greg. I mean, even 3 shots a game. The guy also shoots, I forget the stat exactly, but I believe through the first 20 games, he was shooting 80% from corner threes. So particularly in the NBA, where corner threes are, you need to make those to space the floor, and those shots come up so frequently. That's such a dangerous weapon to have, particularly if he can continue it into the playoffs.
Yeah, and I'll be honest. I was before the draft. I was a big Jason Tatum guy. I believed in his game, and I'd be happy to see him doing this if he wasn't on the Celtics. To be honest with you, I like the guy.
I think that's totally fair. And I know a lot of guys have been very critical of Duke grads in the NBA, like your boy Matt Christensen.
Yeah, I'm very skeptical of all Duke grads.
I guess Jaylen Brown wasn't really a grad, but he did matriculate, so that was a word I wanted to say.
Jaylen Brown's a cowboy.
Oh, good. Wait, did I say Jaylen Brown? I thought we were talking about Jason Tatum.
We were, but then you said Jaylen Brown. It's all right.
I get those young Boston guys mixed up, but I'm looking on you guys talk amongst yourselves for a moment. I'm pulling up his corner 3 numbers.
All right, 13.9 points per game, 5.3.
I told you 14
rebounds. I know you did, but it's 13.9.
Yep. Well, okay.
5.3 boards. I'm more impressed by the 51% from the field than I am from 3.
But dude, also check out his defensive rating. I'm pretty sure he's still one of the top 10 players in the NBA on defensive rating.
I feel like that's because of the Celtics. The entire Celtics team is the top 10 in defensive rating.
But so what?
That is a team stat, yeah.
So Al Horford's good at defense, and then everybody else is just fortunate.
Oh yeah, sorry, I forgot that it takes one guy to be good on defense.
No, it is impressive that he's been a part of this defense. I agree with that.
No, I like what he's doing. I'll be honest, McGovs. I think Danny Ainge did a good job. He's doing a better job than Markelle Fultz. Plus, they got this next pick coming in from either the Lakers or the
Lakers,
or the Kings, depending on what goes on in the world.
Yeah. So to fact check McGovern's 80% comment, Tatum is shooting 43.8% from the corners on 48 attempts, which is a lot. So like he's definitely doing a good job over there. And I know a lot of people coming into the league thought that Tatum was going to be a Melo type, where he's hitting a lot of ISO mid-range jumpers and that he wouldn't necessarily work in Brad Stevens' system, but he has dispelled any of those notions because he's been incredible. He not rookie of the year, Donovan Mitchell incredible, but he's definitely been impressive. All NBA first team.
So that's what I'm talking about, Tom.
All NBA, all rookie first team.
I love it. Yeah, Donovan Mitchell's been doing a great job. He just put up, how many did he score the other day? 40-something? It was 40-something. You'll just have to take the word for it.
It was 40-something. Yeah. So it's a good stat.
Yeah, so Tatum does that, and then he can talk to me. But you want to talk about the Celtics' chances in the East? Is that what we're trying to get to, McGovern?
Well, I think we all know the chances for the Celtics in the East are very, very high. I don't think it's necessarily something we need to continually bore the listeners with because, with all due respect, the Celtics are and will continue to be a very hot team in the East until something changes.
Hey, I'm with you. as much as I hate the Celtics, I hate the Cavaliers twice as much. So I always root for the Celtics against the Cavaliers, but then when they lose, I say, hey, at least the Celtics didn't win. So
true. That's a fair point.
And again, me and Jake touched on this last week. Defense in the playoffs is completely different. It's a different beast. So tough to judge the regular season success we're seeing, just like the Celtics last year. Will it be the same thing next year where they lose by 44 points to the Cavaliers?
Hey guys, I need to amend a stat that I gave earlier. I had to fact check myself. I'm sorry to do this, but before when we were talking, like you kept mixing me up about Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. So I looked up Jaylen Brown's 3-point numbers. Jason Tatum, first of all, he's only taken 24 corner threes, which is half as many as Jaylen Brown, his counterpart. But he is shooting 62.5%. He is 15 for 24 on his corner threes.
That's pretty good.
So I had to make that amendment there, but that's not very many 3-pointers to take, but still very good for the ones he's taken.
Agreed. He's just got to take more of them. You can maintain that same rate. Just got to take a bunch more of them.
Yeah, he should shoot 11 per game like James Harden.
Yeah, exactly. Just 11 corner threes. He'll be a regular Roger Mason Jr.
Oh my God, this is the perfect wrap up it's the best wrap up we've ever had.
That's such a strong callback. We got to end it on that.
Have to end it on that. All right, gentlemen. It has been a pleasure as always. Greg, you can cue the sign-off music now.
Okay.
Nailed it.
Fellas.
All right. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll be back next week.
Subscribe on iTunes. Read our stuff. Check out our Twitter account. Talking Knicks. This has been a lot of basketball.